This week, the video has been sponsored by CA 3D Studios. This is Groundeffected, and my studio is still a mess. But that doesn't mean that I can't paint this model, which is sculpted by Sergaz and offered by CA 3D Studios. I'll tell you more about them later, but for now, I need to just show you what's happening. And basically, what is harpooning is the fact that this base was printed in multiple pieces in order to fit on a printer. And usually, I would put this together in my computer and I would print things like this in one, but I didn't. So I need to fill these gaps, and I'm going to quickly get that all sorted out so that I can paint this model while I get everything ready for the extra room. And I'm hoping with that extra room be able to put all the printers inside of there. It means I can actually bring you a little bit more printer video stuff, because currently it's just not viable to film in my back room. So hopefully this will be easier to film in. But none of that is of any actual importance to this video, and in this video we are making this model, so let's just do that. So the cabinets came, they are the cheapest ones I could find, so it looks just like oak, and so it did this come. But unfortunately, that came at the same time as I was trying to paint the primers, but because of that, I forgot to record any of that, so let's just pretend you got to see me painting the primers. But to be totally honest, I literally just used this new paint from Kaleido as a primer, and I have been using it for a little while, and it seems to be working alright so far. I haven't had too many complaints just yet, but basically this is it. Primed and ready, it's time to paint this model. I decided to use the white primer as a test for making the zenithal, and I'm gonna be honest, it worked. I mean, obviously, I don't know why I would have thought it wouldn't work, but it definitely works. So realistically, if you can't find white ink, then I guess white primer and black primer is the goal, because you can still get your zenithal out of it. The next steps after putting the zenithal on everything was to add this leather brown, which is literally not even leather brown, it's actually snakebite leather. And the reason that I used the zenithal underneath this is because that leather brown is quite see-through. Now, I left the armor parts of this model black, and I'm going to spray them with chrome. This is going to come back and bite me in the ass later. That is because I'm going to need to spray certain parts that are attached to the body. So, we'll see how I deal with that when I get a little bit closer to it. But for now, let's get back to that tree and add some shadows into the deepest parts of the darkest shadowed areas. The next step will then be to start working on the base. And I'm going to take this brown, which is way too bright for the step that I'm doing now, but that is if I was using this as the actual color you're going to see. But if you know anything about me, you know that I like to put down a lighter sort of sketch underneath and then come back and tint that later with colors. And so, speaking of putting the lighter bits, I'm going to use some deck tan to really force some of the highlights on this textured areas on the ground portion of the base. And to avoid being completely brown and kind of looking the same color as the tree, I use Skeleton Horde to tint this color. So I've got the colors for the tree on. I need to paint the snake, and I need to still work on the base part of the stuff. I'm going to add a little bit of moss and stuff. But for now, I'm going to quickly put the skin tones on the skins. That is using the salmon rose, because this will just mean that I'm one step closer to being done, obviously. And with the skin tones in the right place on the model, it is now time to turn my attention to this base. And I'm going to take some of this pigment powder, and I'm just going to literally shove this into the crevasses, mostly around the root areas, because this will just create, number one, a texture, number two, it is also a completely different color to what I've already put down, and this red is quite it's going to be contrasting to the colors that I'm going to be adding later, and one of those colors is this one now, and this is to add like a sort of look of moss. It would be nice if I still had some dirty down moss to add to this, but unfortunately that stuff, once you've opened it, has a shelf life of about 3 days, and then it dies and you can't use it anymore. So I'm still figuring out what to do about that. But moving on and painting the leaves, I decided that I wanted to keep them quite muted. This entire model, actually, I'm going to keep it quite muted because the renders and the way that it looks in the renders is a very muted look. So I feel like this is the effect that Sculptor was going for, and I want to obviously try to pay respects to those As this tree is sacrificing its leaves for the sins of all living creatures, I am going to paint the ones that have fallen off in orange, because this kind of signifies the fact that it is autumn for me now, and also the fact that the leaves don't just fall off unless they go orange. I think that's at least how I think that trees work. And let's stop talking about botany and just paint the rest of this damn base, shall we? And while we paint this in the background, I'm going to use this time to give you a little bit of the advert read, which is going to be about the sponsor of this video, which is very clearly going to be CA3D Studios. Now, I just want to tell you, these dudes have been sponsoring me for a couple of years now, and I've made multiple of their artist models, and I can say with a fact that I've never really had any problems with any of their models. The models are incredibly well sculpted by one of the really best artists that actually exist in the sculpting world, and I can't even know where to begin to explain to you the amount of amazing artists that they have available. But what I can say is, if you go into the description and click on the link to go and see CA3D Studios, you will find for yourself exactly what they have available. And a part of that is, like, honestly, you're getting like 20 or 30 models. If you stayed with them for over 6 months, you literally get access to absolutely everything. It's absolutely incredible. Go and check them out in the description down below. And thank you, CA3D Studios, for sponsoring this video. By the way, if you want this model that I'm painting in this video, all you have to do is join up and send them a message and say that you came from my video, and they will just give you this model. That's how that works. So go check out the description and go and check out CA3D Studios. Stop the video right here. It has been 4 days since I have worked on this project, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. This is because I have been very busy working on this area that I'm going to be printing in the future. However, this is not what this video is about, and there will be a video talking about this area, but this is not information for now. But what is information is that my studio is still a massive mess, as evident by all the plastering on the floor, but I need to paint this model, otherwise you have no video to watch, and I have not done my job. But I would like to quickly just talk about a little thing that I figured out over this period. And that is, while the studio was a mess, I was obviously not able to work on the model. But while it was sitting here, I was able to pick out certain things. So I noticed that the way I had shaded this leg was not quite exactly how I would imagine. Now, I imagine I would probably notice that during my process, but because there was a load of time that I kept looking at this model, I figured that out. So maybe if you are struggling and you're not sure if it's right, maybe put it aside and go build something, or just go touch grass, and when you come back from that, you might notice some things that you can improve on. And I'm going to fix up some of the shading, I'm going to start putting the highlights onto the skin tones, and then I'm gonna work on finishing this model, because I need to finish this model. Also, I feel like at this point, this is like the 3rd or 4th week in a row that there are freaking stockings! And while these stockings actually have some lovely textures for me to dry brush on, I just don't care at this point. Like, I have too much going on. I'm not going to be dry brushing these ones either. I'm just going to spray them. And hope for the best. Now, as I paint this leather corset thing, I'm pretty sure that's the correct word for the thing that is around her mid-torso, and I'm going to paint that with snakebite leather, which, by the way, is one of the worst colors. It's not the worst, but it is one of the worst, and annoyingly, if you let it dry, it will put layers over the top, but luckily it's leather, so it's okay for having a little bit of mismatch paint lines and stripes and stuff from darker drying. It's just terrible, honestly. Painting that color on anything other than texture is the worst thing that ever existed. But I painted that down first, and while it was drying, I painted the stockings so that I could come back and use the Cygor brown to paint over the belt and also some of the straps and stuff on this corset. This helps to make it like separate from each other and still look kind of semi-realistic, but not too realistic, but without also being too vibrant. It just works, I think. I then took some silver and I painted that over the buckles and some of the metal straps that are kind of holding the belt on, and also the little things, I don't know what they're called, they're like flowers that are on the corset as well. And I took then some deck tan and painted the frills around the top of her t-shirt. I also used that, by the way, to line some of the lines that are in that corset as well. And then it was time for me to work on the ginger crows, and basically, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit worried about how I was gonna do this, but realistically, even though they are albino crows, they are technically not just white. You can't just paint them white. They need a little bit of yellow in them. I don't know if you've ever looked at like a lab rat that is kind of those albino lab rats, or even like an albino snake or anything like that. They're not actually white. They in fact almost never are white. They're more yellow than they are white. So I use skin tones in the shadows, and then I took some deck tan, some dust, a load of like white sort of colors, and I painted these over the models, just kind of making them look a little bit yellow. They were not yellow enough though, I will tell you for this for free, and so I did end up adding a yellow tint over the top of them, but also I gave them reddish eyes. I didn't use just pure red. If you use a bright red, it might look a little bit weird, so I used like a dark red, and then I painted obviously the pupil in the center of them, and using some dust just to make sure that the feet and beak were not the exact same color as the rest of the body, and that helps to differentiate things. Now, moving swiftly on to the armor of the model, and on the helmet I painted obviously the chrome on top, and then I put some liquid skill, which is just panel line wash, over all of the armor. This dulls it down so it's not as bright, but I also used this bluish titanium color. I'm pretty sure it's literally called bluish titanium, and I painted that into some of the, there's like gem things or eyeball things that are on the face mask section, and that's pretty much it. Using a dark brown, I painted what I thought would probably be the leather on the inside of her gauntlets, and carefully placed all that color in between the fingers in the areas where the glove section would be, as well as painted the feet on the left arm. Okay, so before we get to the stocking situation, yes, I have tinted them, but there is a load of detail around the top, and there is this like tattoo thing, or maybe it's a design on the side of the stockings. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to be totally honest, I have not got the time to do that detailing. I will do the little design thing on the side, but I'm not going to do that detailing. I might just, at best, maybe just make it slightly darker at the top. And I know that this is a massive cop-out. There's someone in my eye. But it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, there's so much to do. Like, honestly, look at my shop. It's in a massive mess. So, making a video, you get in a video, I'll tell you what you're supposed to do is paint every one of those things individually. I do not have the inclination nor the time to do that, so I'm not doing it. And now that I've set the record straight, I can get into painting the rest of this leg and carry on with that lady who is now currently sitting in the pile waiting for me to carry on with. Before anyone starts getting a little bit uffy about the fact that I'm seeming a little bit deflated, I am not deflated. I am not demotivated. None of that. I'm just really tired. I'm starting to get a little bit old now, and building things for 5 days of a week, doing manual work, when all I do normally is paint pictures or draw on people, it's going to break my body, and my body feels a little bit broken. But don't worry about it. I'm still good. Everything is good. I'm just a little bit tired. Maybe I'll sleep 1 hour extra tonight and fix this. Although I do have to edit this video, so tomorrow night. I know I didn't say anything about it when I did it earlier, but we're getting to a part where that chrome kind of messed me up a little bit, and we'll talk about it as soon as we get to it. But what I did to paint the hair was painted a deck tan over all of the hair, and then I came back and painted black over the metal parts of her helmet. This is the portion that needs to be done really tidily and as neat as possible, because obviously you don't want any of this black on the lovely skin tones or the whitish hair. Then I very gingerly turned my airbrush right down and angled it as much away from the parts I didn't want to get the color on as possible, and I basically just sprayed that chrome over everything. The nice thing about the fact that I'm going to dull it by using some panel wash is that it doesn't matter if I completely cover everything. I just need to make sure that the majority of the center sections of the helmet area are actually chrome, and the rest of it kind of, if there's black on the edges, is not the absolute end of the world. And this is how I get away with airbrushing without having to actually mask anything. Imagine masking around those ears and that hair. I would rather die than do that. Moving on very swiftly to painting her lips. I used the same, that reddish, dark brown, reddish color that I used on everything else to paint her lips. I feel like this ties everything together, but also gives her a nice, deep, rich lipstick color. Now moving on to the eyes, and the technique that I've been using for quite a while now is to just paint some Magus purple inside of them at first. While that is drying, usually I would take a lighter skin tone, and in this case I'm pretty sure I just mix the brighter skin tone with some deck tan, and I paint a line underneath the bottom of the eyes. This goes right over where the eyelid is, and then I paint the black of the eyelashes, and this helps to frame everything nicely. The next step after getting the eyelashes right is to paint the sclera of the eyes. This cream white I feel like is just a little bit too white in my opinion, but in this model they're mostly covered anyway, so it's kind of okay. I do water this down, so that helps a little bit to show some of that purple that is underneath of it and make the eyes not look as white, but this is an important part in shaping the eyes. I'm then going to take a little bit of a dark brown and I'm going to paint the inside of the eyes. And for the lighter color of the eyes, I literally just mixed up a bunch of all the light colors on my wet palette and I painted that into the center of those irises. And once that was done, obviously I put a black dot for the pupil, and I then added a specular highlight with just pure white to make the eyes look shiny and glossy. But to really sell that gloss effect, I use a gloss varnish over the top of both the eyes and also the lips. And once this is dry, I can put the helmet on, put the head on, and call the model done. Now my life has been a little bit freaking mental lately, I'm not gonna lie. I had to move my house, and in that same time I painted the most amount of models I'd ever painted in a month, and then I started to rebuild my studio because everything has gotten out of hand, and I needed to set things straight to make things more streamlined. But I still made sure to get you guys the videos that you needed, and I hope that you appreciate it as much as I appreciate you watching my videos. And I just want to say a massive thank you for watching all of them. Also, at this point, it's a good time for me to say a huge thank you to my Patreons, because they've stood by me through all of this mentalness that has gone on in the background. But not only that, they have helped keep the lights blinding my eyeballs for the longest amount of time right now, and I've never had a better job in my life. This is the best thing I've ever done with my time, other than making my children, but that we won't talk about that because this is a family friendly place. And let's just move on to the end of the video, which is the time where I must say to remind you to go check out the sponsor of this video, and also to tell you that if you didn't like anything you saw in this video, well, I literally don't care, and you probably should just f*** off.